Hey, you guys. So, this is my second time talking about mommahood for Mommahood Mondays. And once again, I'm going to share this to IGTV mainly so that it's there forever. It's there for my posterity, it's for friends who ask questions, and I'll post it to stories so you can know that it's there. But I'm just excited to start off 2021 talking more about mommahood. And so today's topic is, I asked questions a few weeks ago of all the things different mamas would want to talk about, and some said fighting. And I thought, perfect. Last week I talked about just my little story, and these will not go in chronological order of raising children. It's just going to go by the questions that come. And so today's topic is about fighting and how do we deter fighting and my thoughts on fighting. And then next week, someone, once again, lots of questions, but one came up was a little bit about postpartum. And I dealt with that very severely. So next week is going to be a tender topic about postpartum and dealing with that and being gracious with yourself as you're going through it. So Mike and I sat down. I said, Mike, let's talk about fighting and how we dealt with it, because it's been, our kids now maybe will argue a little bit, but they're all bigger. 2 are moved away, 2 are in high school. We do not have fighting like we used to. And I thought, gosh, how did we even stop fighting? I had to go back and kind of reassess what fighting meant to our family and what we did to combat it. So today I kind of wanted to talk about my beliefs in fighting and why it's necessary to communicate, but why it's also necessary to teach proper behavior. And the things that we did for our family might not work for your family, but maybe some of the ideas will spark what you need to do for the babies in your home. I grew up in a home with 6 brothers and no sisters, and my dad was very clear fighting was not acceptable in our house. If you argued, screamed, yelled, hit, you had very big consequences. It was a really great notion for me that it just was not permitted. But also sometimes I felt like, are we allowed to talk at all? I wasn't sure, right? And so I had to kind of navigate those waters. So me and my brothers didn't grow up fighting and we're great friends, but also sometimes I'm like, were we able to communicate all the way when we needed to? And then Mike grew up in a home with just 2 sisters, so there wasn't as much fighting because it was 2 girls and a boy, and he was at the bottom. And anyway, he didn't battle it as much because they were off doing other things, and they got along really well. So my little family, we have 4 kids, and each one has a different personality. And I feel like when you have really extreme personalities, that is when you also get a lot of fighting, because it is not necessarily that they're mean kids or they hate each other, but their personalities clash. And that can be very frustrating as a parent. And as a young mom, I used to say, I had you guys to be friends. I had you to play. I had you to get along. This is so frustrating. And my 2 oldest were so polar opposites. Hence, we had a lot of fighting and a lot of arguing and a lot of tears from them and from me, because my husband was in law school and worked at a law firm and was never home for most of their growing up years, except at very small increments. Not meaning never home that he wasn't super involved. He was very involved, but I was home all day long, every day. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was dealing with it in and out every single day. And I just want to start off by saying I never would have thought 15 years ago that you could have told me I'd be in this place where my kids all get along, they love each other. I'm not stopping any fights anymore. Fighting is a season. And if we don't teach proper behavior of how to fight, it can last longer. I've seen that in family situations where fighting was just brushed under the rug and just you better knock it off and not communicated about. And so the fighting has continued even to adulthood. And that was my goal, to not let that happen. So these are kind of my first thoughts about fighting. I wrote them down that I wanted you to chew on if you're dealing with fighting in your home and it's super frustrating. Number 1, teaching fighting does not work in a week because you came up with one really cool chart. Okay, or not fighting. It is years of guidance. And Mike said in the car today, he goes, it was constant vigilance. That's what it was for our family. Nothing ever worked that we tried one little consequence and boom, we never had fighting again. It just didn't happen. And I actually don't know of a family that has ever happened to. Teaching proper behavior and teaching the ways to deal with your emotions and to not have contention in your home, I think is years and years of governing, of work, of behavior like discussion, and just like my husband said, years of vigilance. Now that we're through that phase, I look back and I'm like, that was like 10 years of every single day working on not fighting. Was it worth it? Absolutely. In the middle of it, did it feel like I was going to lose my mind? 150%. There were so many nights I went to bed crying. I couldn't do it. I couldn't take it anymore. I can't handle the fighting. That was one of the things that was really, really hard for me, was arguing. So, hands down, it's a process of many, many years. That's my first thought. Number 2, be gracious with yourself and with your kids. Everybody's learning. We're all trying to figure it out. I remember one time I was very frustrated in my car and my littles were fighting and I was so upset. My dad was visiting and he said, Kelly, you need to lower your expectations a little bit. And I was like, I expect this. But now that I look back, the kids were 2 and 3 and I'm expecting this. And he was like, Kel, you got to lower that a little bit. Like, they are still learning. They are still growing. They are still babies. And now I know, looking back, their whole life was not determined by their behavior at 2 and 3. But as a young mom with a 2 and 3-year-old who were fighting all the time, I was like, this is horrible. I'm not raising them right. They're going to grow up to be awful. I could not see like the long term. And so that really helped me with my dad saying, just not necessarily lower your expectations of don't expect good things, but just, they're still little. Give them grace and give yourself grace. Okay. That's the second thing I hope you leave with today. Third thing, every single kid is different. My first child was a very calm and collected child. So of course I thought he was such a good kid because I was such a perfect parent. Because everything he did, please don't do that. Okay, Mom. He was extremely obedient and extremely calm and extremely just grown up for his years. Well, then I had child number 2 and he was extremely strong-willed. And so everything I did, he just combated. If he had a spicy mouth, I would carry around those little Taco Bell hot sauces and I would keep in my purse. And if he was spicy, I'd give him some hot sauce. Well, the oldest kid, you do that one time, he will never say that naughty word again. My second kid, he'd take the hot sauce and then he'd ask for more. I mean, I was just like, I don't know. I had to reinvent myself as a parent with the next kid. Okay. So every single kid is going to be different. And something that works for you and one kid might not work for the other kid. And something that works for another mom is not going to work for your kid or vice versa. Right. So we have to be really careful of not comparing ourselves and not placing judgment on another parent, because nobody knows anyone else's kid like you know your own kid. Okay. So they're all different, and be aware that that's why it takes such a long years of practice of honing in the not fighting technique. Next up, the fourth thing I want to talk about is stopping the fighting is not the goal. The goal is actually teaching generosity, charity, love, and respect. And the more we teach those attributes, the fighting naturally stops. Because if our whole goal is just stop your fighting, quit yelling, quit being rude, knock it off, then all they're learning is to shut up, listen to me, and don't express yourself. And then the fighting just continues. You're just not there. They just do it when you're not home. So if we want to stop getting away from the, you need to stop it, and teach, how do we help you understand that this is not appropriate behavior, that there's better ways to communicate, that there's better ways to discuss your feelings, and there's ways to argue without making it detrimental, like fighting, right? And catastrophic. And so that's what I also had to change my mindset. It's not just about stopping it. It's about teaching gracious, kind, respectful behavior, even if you have to disagree, because we will all have to disagree, right? So think about those things when you are like moving forward with your babies. Is number 1, this takes years. It will not change in one afternoon because you had one really good idea, but the years of vigilance is so worth it. Number 2, be gracious with yourself and your kids. Every single night for 20 years, I go to bed and I talk with Mike about my day. I did this wrong with the kids. I did this wrong with the kids. Oh my gosh, they're never going to grow up to be responsible kids because I keep screwing up. And that's not healthy. Like, it's okay to reevaluate what you can do better, but be gracious with yourself, do your best, and then wake up the next day and try again and again and again. And that's what we want to teach our kids to do, that they're going to make mistakes, they're going to fight, they're going to be rude, and then you're going to discipline them, and then you're going to go hug them, and you're going to say, Mom makes mistakes, and so do you. So we did our best. We said sorry. Now tomorrow we're going to wake up and we're going to try again. And we want to teach that behavior, okay? The other thing is, each kid is different. You can't put them all in the same box. You can't judge others. Don't get affected when people judge you. You have to be creative with every child. And then the fourth thing is, your goal is not to stop the fighting necessarily, is to teach proper communication skills and respect for one another as a human being. So those are the things I had to focus on as I moved forward. I will say my two littles, who were so polar opposites, they definitely played. They had good moments, but they fought a lot. They argued a lot. One would get on each other's nerves constantly. It was not until they were in high school, and we had done 15 and 16 years of vigilant work as a parent, that their personalities started to mesh and they started to get along better. It took a long time, and now every single day when my son calls, because he's serving a mission for our faith, every Monday, guess who he wants to talk to? The big brother. The big brother that I never thought they would be best friends, and now they are the number one people they want to talk to. That took years of guidance and vigilance. I have heard people say in fighting, they're just kids. They'll figure it out. Oh well, they'll work it out. Just, they're kids. Let them fight. I'm strong. I don't believe in that. I don't believe just because they're kids, they should be able to do whatever the heck they want. And once again, this is my personal opinion. I don't think that we have to be so strict that they're like huge in trouble, because we have to teach them how to properly manage their emotions. But kids can be taught. And if we just say, they're just kids, just let them do it, that basically says, I'm going to ignore that behavior and they can do whatever they want and hopefully they work it out. And that to me is parenting on the back shelf. It is our job constantly to be teaching our children proper behavior. And sometimes that means letting the behavior go and letting them work it out and not being a helicopter parent. But when they are young, I remember I lived by a neighbor who our little kids were fighting at 2 and 3. And she was like, they're kids, they'll work it out. And I was like, oh no, they're kids and they don't know how to work it out because we haven't taught them yet. So I'm not going to just let them go hit each other and be mean and bawl and then just like, did you work it out? No, because they didn't have the mindset. I hadn't taught them that yet. So maybe when they're older, I'm like, you need to work that out, because I knew I had taught them proper behavior. So you can't just let the kids go work it out if they don't know how. We have to teach. So let me give you a couple of examples of things that we saw in our life that helped us teach and what we did to combat the fighting. I will say initially, straight up, fighting was not allowed in our home. It wasn't an option. I didn't helicopter every second of stop. But if there was an argument, you can better believe when they were younger, I was involved, saying, how did that make you feel? Let's talk about it. You two need to be in this room and work it out. But fighting was not ignored. And I really feel strongly about that, because if I ignored it, then they just would hurt each other and be unkind and be mean and never figured it out. And so I had to, when they were younger, be involved, and I was involved a lot. And we did so much talking. And so let me kind of talk about the things that we did that hopefully will help you if you're dealing with it. The first thing first is example. I know this is basic, but there's a few different examples I want to talk about. As a parent, you already know you are the number one example. If you are screaming with your spouse, if you're screaming at your parents, if you're rude to women in the grocery line, your children are watching and they are thinking that is appropriate behavior. Okay? So we have to, number one, as the parents, be aware of our behavior. If you are gossiping about the neighbor all the time on the phone to your friend while your kids are in the car, what are your kids going to think? It's okay to talk rude about people, right? We have to be the example. So Mike and I, we did not ever make sure our marriage was perfect. There was times we would argue or disagree in front of the children, but it was not fighting, screaming, yelling, being semi-abusive behavior. That did not happen. So the kids knew, Mike, I don't agree with Mike. We need to talk about this later, right? The kids saw that we had an open relationship about disagreeing. But the screaming, the yelling, the throwing things, the swearing at each other, it did not happen. And they'll watch you for that. So number one, you have to make sure your behavior is on point. Number two, What are they watching? I feel so strongly about this. I had an example when my little Mikey was 2 and Bugs Life came out. And he started watching Bugs Life, and I was pregnant with my second son and I was exhausted. And so he'd watch Bug Life like 2 times a day while I would just sleep by him. He started to get really spicy and rude, and I kept thinking, what is going on? Like, why are you all of a sudden, your behavior is not the same? And it dawned on me, he was watching the grasshopper. Do you remember the grasshopper? He was super mean to the little ant all the time. And it hit me, he is learning that behavior from that show. So you can do 2 things. You can stop all mean shows ever, which is an option, or you can talk about it. Oh, do you see how he is being unkind? Yeah, that's not something we do, huh? That's not proper behavior, huh? What would you do differently? Help me understand. Let's talk about it. Pause the movie, discuss the behavior and why it's not appropriate. Once I did that, and once I actually stopped watching it as much, his behavior went back to normal. So what are your kids watching? And if it is negative and it's grumpy and it's rude and it's fighting, take it away or talk about it. The other thing is too, and this is a hard topic, but who you surround yourself with. And this is going to happen in school where you have no control over it. They are going to be around grumpy people and grumpy kids and kids that fight, right? This is normal. They have to be around this. So for us, when my kid would see that behavior, after we would not do it in front of the child, but I had no problem bringing them home, being like, let's talk about that today. So how did that friend behave? What did you think about that? Did you think that was the best option? Or was there some ways that they maybe could have handled themselves better? Could they have communicated better? Could they have used their words instead of using their fists? Could they have not thrown that at somebody and instead talked about it? There was so many times I took examples of what they saw in their daily life and we talked about it. And once again, I was really clear, we're not ripping on somebody. We are learning from their behavior. And I used to say all the time, oh, I think they might have just forgot their manners today. And that made it so like acceptable in my kids' brains because they were like not judging them, not thinking that kid's a brat. I'm not saying he's not raised right. He's a brat. He's a rude kid. Oh, I think so-and-so forgot their manners. Did you see that? Yeah. So what could he have done better? And if you were in that situation, what could you do? And so it helped them have empathy for somebody who wasn't their best self and to try not to judge that behavior, but to learn from it. So that was a tactic I used all the time. Okay, so examples. That's a really, really big part, and you're not going to ever have your kid being around perfect examples. And that's why you have to communicate when they see behavior and how they can not necessarily judge it as that person's bad and I'm good, but how can I learn from that experience? We did a lot of talking. That's why I'm a big fan of, for years, I picked my kids up and dropped them off at school, even though they could take a bus every single day. And people were like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, it's my best talk time. Dropping off to school to make sure I'm reminding them of all the best ways they can be and sending my love. And then picking up from school was my 15 minutes of talk time. Good, bad, happy, sad. We did it every single day. For a few years here and there, I'd have an extra kid in the car, but I just decided it wasn't working for us because I needed my talk time with my kiddos. And so communicating about how they're feeling and the things that they see can really help. Okay, the other thing I wanted to share is what is their reasons for fighting? Kids don't fight just because they're brats, okay? Most kids don't come around just wanting to be mean. Yes, there are some who maybe naturally are a little bit more angry, have had some hard things in their lives that can require maybe some counseling and some deeper help. But most kids don't fight just because they want to fight. Something's wrong. I would find that my son, my second son would be really angry, and then I'd come in and his puzzle was broken and he was screaming because someone touched his puzzle. Well, I can think you're a brat, or, oh, this is really important to you. So how can I help you navigate that of, oh, you don't like it when people touch your puzzles. Instead of screaming, we need to use our words of, this puzzle is special to me. Please don't touch it, right? And so there's always reasons, generally, why they're fighting. And so that's when you start the communication process. As a parent, you can walk in and we don't say, just knock it off, quit it. Even though I did that plenty of times because I felt there were some days I was losing my mind. But there's other times where it's just like, most of the time, what's going on here? Let's talk about it. Come on in. Let's sit down. Okay, how did that make you feel? Okay, oh, no, now it's his turn. How did that make you feel? And we did this mediation between the kids so that they could discuss, how did this make you feel? I actually had an experience once where my son had some friends over and they all got in a fight. And one, they were probably 7 or 8 at this time, and one was ready to go home bawling. And I loved this kid so much, I just couldn't do it. And I said, wait. And I gathered those kids in my living room and I said, can we talk about this? Okay, what happened? No, hold on a minute. It's his turn to share what happened with him. How did that make you feel? Okay, I understand that. Wait, now it's your turn. How did that make you feel? And within 15 minutes, every kid had talked about how they made it feel. I helped them mediate this huge fight. And then they started to understand, oh, I didn't know that would have made you sad. And the other kid could talk about, yeah, that did make me sad. By the end, it had worked out. This huge fiasco that I was so stressed that someone was going to run home and tell a mom, and then I was going to get a bad phone call and all the things. It took 15 minutes to diffuse because they could communicate. And then they left friends. And it taught them they could do that again and again and again. So when kids are fighting, think of what is the reason? There is a reason why they're upset and why they're fighting. So let's get down to the bottom of the reason and then talk about how that made us feel. And generally that teaches them that I can communicate about this and I don't have to be so angry, because generally somebody doesn't know why I'm mad and they didn't know that bugged me. So I need to learn how to communicate. So think of the reasons and help them understand and communicate the reasons. Some of my favorite words are, when I picked them up from school, was good, bad, happy, sad. Tell me all the good, the bad, the happy, and the sad. And when they were fighting, we would say, help me understand. Help me understand what that meant for you. Help me understand why that bothered you. And then you ask your friend, help me understand what my rude behavior helped you feel, like made you feel, right? That was a really great comment. And the other one was, I feel this when. I feel this when somebody touches my stuff, I'm hurt. Or I feel this when you spit at me, I don't like that, right? And so those were words that those were little phrases that really helped my kids to communicate. So feel free to steal phrases like that and use them when you're working with your kids. Okay. In all of this, where do you become a helicopter parent and a proactive parent? This was a lesson that I learned from my aunt who had 10 kids. She homeschooled them all. And I was like, no, if you always get involved, you're a helicopter parent. And she was like, no. There's a difference between a helicopter parent and a proactive parent. And that really stuck with me. You know, and you can Google helicopter parent. It's a person that doesn't ever let their kid fall, or they can't trip, or they don't ever they're not allowed to have consequences for their behavior. They don't ever let them feel life. That's a helicopter parent. But a proactive parent is different. Meaning you are very involved in your children's life, but you are teaching them as you go. You're not stopping all the consequences. So for instance, if a kid is walking across the street and a car's coming, heck yes, you're going to stop them, because that's what any parent would do to keep them safe. But what if a kid trips? You don't have to run, oh my gosh, are you okay? You kind of step back. You're proactive, you're there, you're available. And then you see, how did that hurt, huh? Oh, bummer, maybe we should tie our shoes. Okay, that would help next time. All right, let's go get you settled. There's a difference between stopping every consequence and allowing some of the consequences to happen depending on their age and what is necessary. So when they're fighting, instead of a helicopter parent of stop, nope, stop, nope, you can't, nope. Don't let them ever argue. Don't let them ever fight. Don't let them ever have consequences. You can depending on the age, let the fighting go for a second or two and see, after you've taught them, are they going to work it out? And you listen and you're aware, oop, I don't think it's working out. And sometimes I'll be like, do you guys need my help? I'm here if you need me to help you work it out. And when my kids got older, no, mom, we can work it out. I'm like, oh, good. Then work it out and stop using your rude voices. Right? And when they're younger, they need your help. They need you to be proactive and available and be like, I'd love to help you work this out. Can I sit here with you and see how that made you feel? And let's talk about it. And then as a proactive parent, you also know what your kid can handle. I had a child who was very particular about things. And I knew as a young age, large group settings were not his best option. Okay. And certain situations where certain kids were coming over that I knew were really tricky would not work for him. And so I was very proactive in noticing those things. And we quit doing large birthday parties because those are overstimulating, and hence he would start getting angry and frustrated. So we avoided those until he was ready to handle more. And if certain people were coming over that I knew were really tricky for him, I was just super involved. I made sure that I had Legos out and not just blocking them up in a bedroom to play while me and the parents talked, because I knew something was going to happen and they were going to fight and somebody was going to come down crying. So I did more proactive work of, hey, let's keep the kids by us while we visit. And I pulled out all my Legos and I would help work with them, and they would still fight, but I would just kind of be there instead of just sending them off in a bedroom, because they were learning. And then the more they learned to get along, the more those families connected with us, then the more they could handle being off by themselves and connecting. Okay, so think about the difference of a helicopter parent versus being proactive. And I think that will help change your mindset in helping your kids. The last thing that we were insistent on of our family is family time and working together. I have seen in my life, the more families that are proactive in doing things together seem to get along better. And I watched families where every single time they go out to dinner, they'd, oh, sure, bring a friend. Sure, bring a friend. There was never time on vacation. We're always going to have people with us. There was never time that they were just together as a family. And I think that as I've watched those families, it's added to the non-cohesiveness of the family. Being alone together is very key. Make sure you have time where you do trips or you do dinner or you go shopping together, that it is just your kids, that they have to be together. They have to learn how to join each other's company. And the more we do that, the more we saw our kids getting used to it. The first few vacations when they were little, was it hard? Totally. Was it stressful? Absolutely. Did they fight? Mm-hmm. And then we did it again. And we did it again. And we did it again. And they got used to being alone in a hotel or camping or together with just our family. And they knew that when we're together, this is what we do. And their relationship blossomed. The other things that we tried really hard to do is when somebody has a sports game and you're not doing anything else, you come, you support. We're there for our family. So it teaches that camaraderie. It teaches that love. It teaches that like sibling connection. So to this day, every single time my daughter has a dance recital, anyone who is home is required to go. Was it times where like, I don't want to go? Oh yeah. Mom, I cannot sit through another ballet performance. I know, but we're family, so we're going anyway. Now, of course, if they had other things to do, then but there was no harm done. There was no treating them poorly or you aren't involved, but putting them down. But if they were available, that's what we did. And you want to know what is so cool? Now that my boys are older, they like, when's our next performance? I'm coming down from college to go. Like they look forward to it because we have done it for years as a family. And so that is really helpful in fostering the non-fighting and the long-term relationships, is making sure you do alone things with your family so that they connect and they love as much as you can, teaching that supportiveness. And then if they can't go, like so many times at dinner, we would be like, how was your day? Oh, let's celebrate you. So-and-so did this. And let's celebrate you. So-and-so did this. And we're so good for you. And then we would also open it up as they got older. We discuss hard things around the table of, you guys, this was really hard for Mikey. Like, do you want to talk about it? How'd you get through it? And then they would all hear their siblings. This is more of like an older thing, but talk about their hardships. Or even if like one kid was getting bad grades, we would talk about it. Okay. And we would make sure that the kid was comfortable, right? There's certain topics you don't just want to embarrass them about at dinner or in the car, but we could be like, okay, so-and-so is really struggling and we've talked about it. Like, you have done really well in that class. Do you have any tips for this person? And they'd be like, oh, actually, yes. And then all of a sudden they're hearing from their sibling how to do better. And it fostered camaraderie. It fostered love. It fostered attention. And this deep connection. That's what we would do when they were older. But when they were younger, the kids always had different things that they had to take care of with the other kid, right? So we would encourage our oldest, okay, now I need you to help mama watch this kid, or can you push this kid in the stroller, or not too much where they're burned out, but things that they took responsibility for in loving that kid and taking care of that kid. Okay, Mikey, I need you to feed Dallin while I'm changing Carly's diaper. I am so proud of you and I am so grateful to you every time you help me feed him, and he loves it. Thank you, son. So when your kids are saying, I don't want to, just don't allow it. Teach them to take care of each other, to work with each other, to give each other love and attention, and also do things for each other, because then it fosters, again, that love and that attention. As much as you can, ways that you can do that. Some things that we did. Somebody asked me, did we spank? I'm actually going to talk about that in a couple of weeks, about like discipline versus tonight of just arguing. So hold tight on the discipline chat. But the fighting, when they were little, I was more of a very proactive parent. Oh, no, we don't talk that way. Oh, bummer, we don't use those kind of words. Why don't you think of a new word that you can communicate with your brother about how you feel? Oh, we don't hit. That's a bummer. You can hit a baseball, but we don't hit friends and we don't hit family. So try again. There was lots of, oh, we're going to try that again. Oh, nope, that didn't work. Lots of role play. And so I encourage you, if you've got littles, to do that. Give them grace, teach them, and then have them role play it again. Let's try that again. Oh, that was not a nice word. Let's think of a new word. Let's try it again. And we did that all the time. Oh, let's start over. And even when I was spicy and I would lose it, because I promise you guys, I lost it so many times. I would literally breakfast and I'm losing it. I'm already stressed. I'm like, I can't do it today. And then I'd be like, you guys, I am so sorry. Mommy's behavior was not good. Can we try again? Can we start this morning over? Because mommy messed up and I need to try again. So my kids saw me trying again, so it was very natural for them to try again as well. Oh, bummer, that didn't work. Let's start over. And so they felt that grace. They felt like, oh, I made a mistake, but I can do that again. So I would encourage you, as younger moms of younger babies, to teach the proper behavior and then role play and try again, over and over and over, and it will stick. Okay? There's going to be some times where it's absolutely inappropriate and you're like, I am done. And sometimes you want to lose it on your own kid. Then I would just say, put him in rooms. Just, mommy's going to lose it. You need to go in here and you need to go in here. And I need a 5-minute timeout. Okay? Because there's just times everyone's so spicy and so upset that it's not going to end well. All the statistics in the books that I read, because I've read so many parenting books, was 1 minute of timeout per age, right? So if they were 2, a 2-minute timeout. 3, 3-minute timeout, right? And the timeout does not have to be, you're a brat, get in here, you're in timeout. I need you to think about that for a minute, because that wasn't proper behavior and that hurt my feelings, or that hurt so-and-so's feelings. So I want you to go in here, have some quiet time, and think about it. Now I can say that now. Was there plenty of times that I was like, get in there and you're done? Yes, there's plenty of times I did that too, but work on helping the timeout be effective versus making them so angry that they just are mad at you. Help them think, and this is a really great time for you to calm down and think about it. So I totally did timeouts, and that can help. When they got a little bit older and they understood a little bit more how to communicate, it was, you two are going to be in this room together until you can work it out. And the rules are, we don't hit, right? That was a huge, we did not hit in our family. It just was not allowed. And so we don't hit, but you're going to stay in here. And of course, I was right there ready to help if they needed. But oh, bummer. Nope, you're still screaming. No, you're going to have to try again. I've taught you what you need to do. You have your skills, so use your words. Use your words, and there's your skills, and practice, and then come out when you're done. And sometimes it took a long time. Okay, so but that is something that they can communicate with, is sending them a place where they need to work it out. Because if they never have to work it out, then they're not learning that process. The last thing I wanted to share with you before we wrap it up is, often we would have our kids write a letter to that person, like what they did wrong. This is when they were a little bit bigger. We're talking 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, that was really unkind. So I'm going to need you to go over here and you need to write down the things that you're sorry for of what you did to your brother. I didn't do anything wrong. No, there's always two to tango. You must have done something, so I need you to think about that and write your brother a letter. And so they would have to think of their own thoughts and communicate on paper that way. And so it was helped them get into their words onto paper and communicate a little bit better, and that also worked for us. So with all of those things, I hope that gives you a couple of tips and tricks of how the fighting worked for in our house and what we learned as a family of how to deal with the fighting. Make sure to please be gracious with yourself and remember that you're going to lose it sometimes. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to cry. They're going to cry. Just start the next day over and over again. And it gets easier and easier the older they get and the more they learn how to communicate. Finally, if you have a child that has surpassed all of these skills and is so difficult, I would encourage you to maybe consider getting some coaching. Sometimes we call it counseling. Sometimes we call it therapy. Right now, the big thing is to call it life coaching, to sit down with somebody else who can help them navigate their emotions and learn how to communicate. And this can be so effective and so helpful. And there's no shame in getting outside help to help them communicate. Even school districts now, like our school district is now offering free classes of how kids to navigate their anxiety, their fighting, their depression. And so your school district might be already offering something like that. And so consider that if it's outside your scope that you don't feel like you can handle, get some outside help. And somebody to call a life coach sometimes can really be helpful for a child to be like, that's my person and they're in my court and they're helping me learn better skills. So if you have any other suggestions of how you deal with fighting, leave them in the comments. Once again, this will last on this page forever. So this will go and go and go. And so you can come back and see the resources as we go. And so next week, we're going to be talking about postpartum after those babies are born, because I went through that pretty heavily and I've got a lot of special things to say. So anyway, I hope this helps.